Hi, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of our pre-action resilience challenge. So it's been really great to just really focus on self-care and resilience this week. I mean, I have a regular, pretty deep regimen of that anyway, but I'm always growing and always improving. So in teaching this week, I've really been focusing in and adding some new wrinkles and discovering some new elements of how I can really work with my resilience building day in and day out. So I'm very uh, happy to be involved in that and to be sharing this with all of you. And so I hope you keeping up with the resilience practices. So doing 20 minutes of meditation a day, 20 minutes of some kind of meditation practice today, ideally in the deeply embodied neuro-somatic mindfulness approach. I encourage you to try that because practicing in this deeply embodied way is the most leveraged, most optimal way to achieve greater resilience through meditation practice. And then adding in the self-compassion practices in this deeply embodied way as well, either doing that as part of the 20 minutes or in addition to the 20 minutes. And drinking the water to get sufficient hydration so we keep things fluid and moving through us and get enough, not only oxygen through proper breathing, but enough H2O to the cells. So we can thrive. So I encourage you to keep trying to drink at least 8 of these, depending on your body weight a day. I think that's my 5th glass already today, so I'm well on my way with good hydration. And then remembering to make use of these physiological self-regulation tools, straw breathing, box breathing, diaphragmatic breathing all together, and then the 4-7-8 breathing. So lots of tools here to work with. You also may remember on the first day, I gave you that practice you can do anytime, anywhere. Why don't we just try to model that right now? So, whatever we're doing, just let our mind be doing whatever it's doing. We often have lots of thoughts coming and going, thinking about things we have to do in the future, worrying about things in the past, thinking about whatever we're thinking about ourselves and what other people think about us and so forth. That very busy, noisy mind. And then at any moment, we can just go, stop, feel, breathe, and be. So by just voicing to ourselves internally, we don't have to do it out loud, especially if we're not by ourselves. That might seem weird. But anyway, we can do it internally, and that cuts through the discursiveness of mind. And then we allow ourselves to simply feel whatever we're feeling physically, emotionally in that moment, perhaps kind of bringing our attention to the heart center and just allowing ourselves to feel. And then remembering to breathe so we're not holding the breath, just letting the breath go. And then just relaxing into a quality of pure beingness, pure presence, embodied presence, being, simply being. Just allowing ourselves a moment of just being the way we are, just being as we are in the moment. So again, stop, feel, breathe, and be. Okay. And the more moments of embodied presence and beingness we can bring into our daily life, the more we'll be cultivating resilience, the more we'll feel a sense of emotional and cognitive balance and equanimity, and the better we'll be able to handle our lives and navigate all the significant challenges that we face day in and day out, especially in these times. Okay? So today, I'm going to focus on growth mindset. So, what do we mean by that? So, you may have read some of the description on the emails you've been getting, and making that distinction between the growth mindset and what is called a limited mindset. So, I'm going to talk about the limited mindset to begin with. And this is really just the result of the human condition. the human condition sets us up biologically for a fear and survival based life. That's just what we're set up to do because job one for any species, of course, is survival. So our biology is set up that way. And the conditions of our, we start off in a very vulnerable place as infants. And so just trying to cope with growing up, developing the self structures, psychological structures with which we navigate life, it inevitably is fear and survival based. And in fact, all the great spiritual traditions, as well as traditions of psychology, even modern physics, tell us that the world is very fluid, groundless, impermanent, and that there is this quality of a lack of solidity. You know, this relative world where it feels like I'm really solid, and you're solid, and the trees are solid, and everything's discrete is really not the way the world is at a deeper level. It's very groundless, very impermanent. And of course, as little children, we have no way to deal with that kind of groundlessness. So we develop a self structure with which to navigate the world. And we pass that together out of whatever's around, whatever's available to us. The more stable, loving, nurturing our upbringing is, we develop a more stable self structure and we're usually higher functioning in life. The less stable, less loving, less nurturing our childhood is, we tend to develop a less stable self structure. Maybe we're not as functional in life. Maybe we're really struggling in some ways. For most of us, it was a mixed bag. But all of that, even the highest functioning among us, it's dear a fear and survival based structure. And there's some quality of always just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Thoreau, the great philosopher and naturalist, said that the great the great masses of men, it was before gender neutral language, are living lives of quiet desperation, living lives of quiet desperation. So even the highest functioning among us, in the background, there's always this fear waiting for the other shoe to drop. Right? Because all of our structures are basically fear and survival based. So because of that, we're also set up to fall into a fixed mindset. And it doesn't have to be that way or stay that way. That's just what we're up against. That's the challenge of our human experience. And that's what we're here to transform. So the fixed mindset is when we assume that we just are the way we are. You know, I like the things I like. I don't like the things I don't like. You know, I have these various personality traits and habits, but that's just the way I am. You know, these things upset me. There's nothing I can do about it. You know, this is, you know, I'm more of an introvert. That's just the way I am. Or I'm more of an extrovert. That's just the way I am. Or you know, I just don't like to do things I'm not familiar with, or you know, I don't like a certain kind of people. Whatever it is, we just feel that's the way I am. And you know, if somebody's giving us feedback, we'll say, well, you know, you're going to have to accept me the way I am or not, because that's just who I am. And we really feel that that's fixed. And in our experience, it may feel relatively fixed, but it's not. It's all just conditioning. It is all changeable if we aspire to change any of it, based on the phenomenon known as neuroplasticity, the fact that our brain is continually restructuring itself based on what we expose it to. Now, our brains are nowhere near as fluid or plastic now as adults as they were when we were children, but they are still certainly fluid and plastic and changeable. And in fact, the brain can change throughout our lifespan, and we can actually transform the neural networks in the brain. And two of the things that make our networks more plastic, more changeable are physical exercise and mindfulness practice, some kind of mindfulness meditation, mindfulness and awareness meditation practice. And the cool thing about mindfulness and awareness meditation, not only does it help the brain be more changeable, it nudges it in a positive direction in terms of having a more positive outlook, greater emotional and cognitive balance, and so forth. So it is all changeable. And when we don't recognize that or assume it's not, that's what we call the fixed mindset in relation to ourselves. Then we have the world around us. So we often just assume circumstances are what they are, and I don't really have any choice about how to relate to them. You know, and I regard other people as just being the way they are. Like that person's that way, they're never going to change. That's just the way they are, right? And we form all kinds of assumptions and even beliefs about the people we interact with and how the world is, and these assumptions that become beliefs really drive our life. And a lot of these are unconscious beliefs. There is something called limiting core beliefs, which are operate below the level of our awareness. And some of them can be very negative about ourselves, like I'm not smart enough, tall enough, handsome enough, pretty enough, wealthy enough. I'm not as good as other people. I'm just not enough, or I'm a loser, or I'm a bum, or I'm an addict. I'll never be anything else, or these negative core beliefs about ourselves or about the world. The world's a scary place. You can't trust people. There's not enough love, land, money, fame to go around. That sense of scarcity. And so a lot of us are beset with these kind of negative core beliefs about ourselves and about the world. And we feel like they're kind of fixed. They're beliefs. We believe them, right? But they were all built up through conditioning and through going from the open field of data and things being very fluid and changeable to making assumptions about things and then narrowing the data we pay attention to. And then that becomes a conclusion. We further narrow the data we pay attention to. So it all supports our conclusion, eventually becomes a belief, and these beliefs run our life, right? So all these beliefs about ourselves and about the world. And the extent that we allow these to be fixed or assume they're fixed and unchangeable, or we really believe that is the way it is. So that's what we mean by a fixed mindset. I think you can imagine as I'm speaking about this that this is a very limited way to live. This is how we create. It is the prison of our own making. Many of you may have heard that we're all living in a prison of our own making, and in fact, there's been many metaphors for this in various spiritual traditions, and often it is said that we can't aspire to some kind of spiritual freedom or liberation until we actually see the bars of our own prison. Till we see the bars of our own prison. And seeing the bars of our own prison is seeing our own conditioning, seeing all of our limiting core beliefs that drive our attitudes and behaviors. We have to see all this mental, psychological prison of conditioning that we all live in. And it's hard to see that. And we have to really have strong intention to see it and the willingness to look at it. And it can become somewhat daunting to see that. I remember when I did a training during my prison years that is called the event. In prison, we called it changes bridges to community, but it still operates. I'm an event trainer, and we lead it in the world still. It's a very powerful personal transformation training. And so I don't know whether it was my second or third event in prison. We did 4 of them while I was there. I just had this profound realization of how my mother and father or mom and dad issues were still totally driving my own psychology. And that was kind of insulting to see because I had already done a lot of work on myself. Before I even landed in prison, I had a master's degree in clinical psychology and psychotherapy and had been in all kinds of therapeutic groups and done all kinds of deep work. I've been practicing meditation by that time for probably 20 years or more. I'd done a lot of work on myself, and I just saw this with such clarity of how this underlying thing of all my, you know, relational issues of reaction, anger, different trying to please, trying to prove all these different ways, and these sort of mom and dad issues were still fundamentally driving my psychology. It was insulting to see that. It was painful to see that. And it was incredibly liberating. My personal work opened up to an entirely new level. So I saw yet another set of the bars of the prison of my own making. Now I say of my own making, I mean, most of this conditioning happened before we had anything to say about it. Most of it happened in our childhood. But we continue to allow it to happen as adults, and we continue to reinforce it. So at some point as adults, it's helpful to acknowledge that, yes, this is a prison of my own making and only I can undo it. All right. So if we're not in the process of undoing it, or we assume that all that is just the way it is and that's real, both internally around ourselves and externally in relation to the world, that's what we call the fixed mindset, a very limiting place to live. And because of that, we often operate from what we call the victim mindset, the victim mindset. Now, you may be familiar with Stephen Cartman's drama triangle. To me, this is one of the greatest psychological insights that's ever been discovered. And I've used Stephen Cartman's work forever within my own work and have permission from him to use it and to adapt it. And people just find this so liberating when they get it. And so it's this triangulation between the victim mindset, the persecutor mindset, and the rescuer mindset. And these are all just psychological mindsets that are kind of shadow attempts to gain a sense of power and control. But it's really driven by this sense of victimization, helplessness, and powerlessness. And within the fixed mindset, I generally feel like I'm being victimized by the circumstances of my life. And of course, the idea of liberating ourselves from this is not at all new. Marcus Aurelius, often called the last good Roman emperor and one of the Stoic philosophers, he has a wonderful book of aphorisms, of Stoic philosophical aphorisms that I encourage anyone to get and read. It's a great little manual to have for our own development. But one of them, and kind of paraphrasing here, is that most of us assume or believe that our destiny is determined by our circumstances, that our destiny in life is basically determined by our circumstances. The zip code where we were born, the parents were born to, the advantages or disadvantages that we have, and the luck or bad luck that we experience, our circumstances. But he said, in fact, that's not true. Our destiny is actually shaped and or determined by our response to those circumstances, our response to those circumstances. So bracing that kind of notion is what we mean by the growth mindset, by the growth mindset. Now, I'm going to talk about three different approaches to this here. And I'm actually going to start with something that comes from my Zen training. I did my Zen training with my Zen teacher, Roshi Bernie Glassman, in the Zen Peacemaker Order and Zen Peacemaker community that's part of the Japanese Soto Zen lineage. And we have something called the three tenets of the Peacemaker work, the three tenets: not knowing, bearing witness, and what has been called healing, uh, loving action, compassionate action. Towards the end of his life, Bernie didn't want to qualify at all. He just said it's the actions that arise out of bearing witness from a place of not knowing. So not knowing, we say, is letting go of fixed ideas about ourselves, others, and the world. Letting go of fixed ideas about ourselves, others, and the world. Now, that's much easier said than done, but that is the basis of the growth mindset. So it means letting go of our conditioning. And I really feel this is the inherent purpose of all the inner technologies of all the world's great spiritual traditions, yogic traditions, contemplative traditions. Within all the major religions, with all have their contemplative inner aspects, as well as various philosophies and shamanic traditions, indigenous traditions, the world over throughout history. Human beings have been realizing that really our task as human beings is to get out from behind our conditioning, to somehow relax or drop all the filters and biases and preconceptions and conditioning so we can experience life directly as it is, raw, naked reality. That is really the goal of all the great spiritual paths and all the technologies within these paths, is how do you get free of your conditioning and experience life as it is. So that's not knowing. To the extent that we can do that, then we can actually bear witness to things as they are. We can actually experience life as it is, the joys and sufferings of life directly, rawly, nakedly, without the protection of our knowing. Because really, all of our knowing and the way we cling to that, even the fixed ideas about ourselves, we identify with that. And then when people give us feedback, we feel personally attacked because, oh, that's who I am. It's all just conditioning. It's all just conditioning. Nothing wrong with that. It's not feeling bad about ourselves, but it's just realizing that we actually have choice. We have a tremendous level of choice where before we may have assumed that we did not. So not knowing allows us to bear witness to the world and actually get in touch with reality as it is. And this naturally, peacemakers and human beings throughout time and all human cultures have been discovering that to the extent that we can do the first two, relax into not knowing or somehow transform ourselves into not knowing through spiritual technologies and practices, and then bearing witness to reality as it is, that what naturally arises is wisdom-based action, loving action, compassionate action, or actions that are actually an appropriate wisdom-based response to what is, rather than coming out of preconceived notions and beliefs and attitudes and so forth. It's actually a natural, organic response to what is. One of my theories about why this works is I have a strong experiential belief that I've developed through my own spiritual practices and training and education over the years in the unconditional innate goodness of all human beings, all of life. And my first spiritual teacher, meditation teacher, the great Tibetan master Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, called this basic goodness, basic goodness. The basic, our own basic goodness, the basic goodness of others, the basic goodness of society, the basic goodness of life. And this has been really the dominant view throughout history in world cultures. There have been minority views of that, no, instead of basic goodness, there's the flawed nature of humanity. This is a minority view, and I think actually a mistaken twist on the original theology and religious ideas from which that sprang. So, and then there's a blank slate model that we're just blank slates, and then whatever we're influenced by. But the dominant model throughout history around the world has actually been the view of basic goodness, of innate goodness. And think about it. What do the vast majority of human beings do all over the world every day? All over the world. We get up, we have the courage to get up and face the day, face our life. We get up and we do our best to take care of ourselves, take care of our children. We work, we cooperate, we queue up at the well, at the store, we drive on the right side of the road. We're naturally collaborative and cooperative and very well behaved as long as fear doesn't set in. As long as we have some confidence we can get our needs met in reasonable ways. If fear sets in, then you see all the other behaviors, and we can see some really horrific behaviors. So the key is to lower the fear for ourselves and others. But absent that fear, we're naturally kind, collaborative, caring, loving beings, right? So I think there's actually tremendous evidence for this view of the innate basic goodness of humanity. So anyway, my theory is that when real data contacts basic goodness, what you get is naturally wisdom-based actions in the world. So not knowing, working with this idea of not going, letting go of fixed ideas about ourselves, others, and the world in order to embrace a growth mindset. And then radical responsibility, which is the name of my book and this model I developed, and it's how I transformed my own life in prison. And this is the idea of really embracing choice. It is embracing 100% responsibility or ownership for each and every circumstance we face in life, including the ones we can see we had some role in creating or co-creating or allowing, or and if we really look deeply with self-honesty, we'll see a lot of the circumstances we face, we do have some relationship to. However, however, there will certainly be some that really feel like they just fell out of the sky and landed on our head. And everyone would agree we had nothing to do with it, unless it's like past life karma, and who knows about such things, right? Even if it's true, what good does that do? Well, it could be helpful. I can embrace it and say, okay, that's my karma. It was another guy kind of that created the karma, but okay, I can own that. But even apart from that, the fact is, even if it feels incredibly unjust and everyone would agree and it shouldn't happen to anybody, there it is. The fact that it is now in my life. It landed in my lap. Didn't land in Joe's or didn't land in James. It landed in my lap. And at some point, the salient question is, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to let it take me down? Or am I going to find some way to marshal the courage and the resourcefulness to discover the most creative way I can respond to it to move forward in my life and perhaps even turn tragedy into something positive, right? And of course, we're faced with little decisions like this all day long. Everyone always wants to go to the worst case scenarios, but even those, human beings have been transforming those forever and finding a way to move forward in their lives rather than letting themselves be taken down and get caught in a victim mindset and a fixed mindset. Now, we may feel that way, and this is not about telling other people not to be that way. And certainly people are victimized in life, and they may need to have that validated. They may, to be in all those feelings, to get support around that, even seek justice around that. But there's a difference seeking justice from a place of self-empowerment than from the victim mindset. And I think we can realize if someone stays stuck in that place their entire life, no matter how reasonable it may be, because horrific things happen to human beings, at the very least, it's going to be very self-limiting for them. But at any rate, this is really a conversation about ourselves, and it's a conversation about adults, not children. Children deserve to be protected and so forth. But as adults, the idea is embracing 100% ownership for each and every circumstance we face in life, Both those we can see we had something to do with, and those we don't feel like we had any relationship to it at all. Because at some point, what we can still own is our choices. I'm making choices. Like something happened, it's now in my life. My future, my destiny is going to be determined by the choices I'm making right now, the way I choose to respond, hopefully responding consciously to it with creativity and resourcefulness rather than just reacting to it unconsciously out of habitual patterns and fear and survival based habits and that sense of victimization. Okay, so this is the idea of radical responsibility, and it's the road to freedom. It's how I transform my own life in prison, and it's how I was able to create two national organizations and catalyze two national movements: the prison mindfulness movement and the prison hospice movement from inside my prison cell. Something prisoners are not supposed to be able to do. Started all kinds of programs, turned that into 14 years of personal transformation for myself in a world of tremendous pain and suffering and a very negative and in many ways nasty, difficult, challenging, painful place. And yet I was able to transform that into my monastery time and a place of transformation and benefit a lot of people along the way. And that's not, I don't say any of that to congratulate myself. I just ended up in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the right time in order to be challenged to do that. And I'm very grateful for that journey. But I just point to what's possible because I was in a maximum security prison where that's not supposed to be possible. Complete powerlessness. The authorities have total control. The answer to everything is no. So, how do you accomplish something? I was able to accomplish these things by grounding myself in the belief in my own and others' basic goodness and embracing this growth mindset, the form of which I call radical responsibility. Then I'd like to just finish by talking about something that comes out of radical responsibility. And by the way, I encourage you to get my book if you're interested. This whole idea of moving from the drama zone where the drama triangle is, and it's all about limitations and helplessness and powerlessness and problems, and shifting into what I call the empowerment zone, and where the empowerment triangle, which is the domain of authentic relationship and the blue sky where all the good stuff is in life. I don't have time to go through that whole model right now, but I have a book called Radical Responsibility, and through Heart Mind Institute, I have a online course called Radical Responsibility if you want to check that out further. So out of that growth mindset comes what I call radical possibility, the idea of making the impossible possible. Really, from that growth mindset, everything is possible. Now, I mean, reasonably possible, right? I mean, I'm not going to become an Olympic athlete at 71 years old. I guess maybe there's the senior Olympics or something where if that's what I wanted to do, I could maybe do that. But I'm not going to become, a non-age group level Olympic athlete. I had to give up on being a rock star a while back since I never have mastered playing an instrument, so we have to be reasonable, but still within reason, you know, anything is possible. Anything that we really want to do is possible. You know, I'm 71 years old. I started a new business last year. Most people retire at my age. I started a new business. I get up every day excited about the work I'm doing in the world and in a criminal justice sphere through the nonprofits, Prison Mindfulness Institute, and so forth, as well as through Heart Mind Institute and what I'm able to bring to the world. I'm really excited about generating and creating, and it keeps me going. I'm at probably as healthy as I've ever been. I'm in as good a shape as I've ever been. I weighed in at 178. I'm trying to get down to 170. I haven't weighed that probably since I was in high school, right? And at one point I was up around 205 and I got really serious about losing the weight, got down into the 180s, but bounced around back and forth between, the mid 80s to the low 190s back and forth. And then when COVID-19 set in, I need to drop the rest of this weight. I need to get serious about this. So I'm down to 178 on my way down to 170, which it was considered to be the ideal weight for, and I would have then the ideal body mass index for someone of my height and age. So anything is possible. And this is the idea of radical possibility, making the impossible possible, making the impossible possible. Now, isn't that an exciting place to live rather than, well, I don't think I could do that? I don't like that. And, oh, that kind of stuff's kind of hard for me. And, I don't really like to put myself in situations like that. And, I actually watched a great video when I was in prison. You all probably remember Dr. Wayne Dyer, who we lost, I think, a couple of years ago. But what an incredible teacher of the growth mindset. And this videotape that we had in the prison library that I listened to quite a few times, it was called Becoming a No Limit Person. Becoming a No Limit Person. And he talked about how, being in different situations, like maybe you're somehow you end up staying over to a friend's or something over a weekend unplanned. You're there, and they say, "Well, we don't really have an extra bed, but we have a bedroll we can pop for you on the screen porch out here." And someone, "Oh, I don't do that. My back, my back issues. I could never sleep in a bedroll. I could never sleep on the floor. Oh no, I couldn't survive that." And for food, we don't have a whole lot to eat here, but we could do that. Oh no, no, I could. He went through this whole rap, and that's the fixed mindset. Or oh, great, yeah, I'll try that. You know, just sense of possibility. I'll do it. I can do it. I mean, when we go out on street retreats, I do have lower back issues, and I work very hard every day to prevent myself from having outbreaks of my lower back issues, and I hope to actually transform it completely. And I work hard at that. But I go out on street retreats, and we sleep on the concrete, you know, outdoors with cardboard and newspapers and stuff. And it's been amazing. I sometimes will wake up feeling better having slept on the concrete than I do sleeping in a more luxurious bed, right? So anyway, it's just that sense of possibility, radical possibility. Okay, so just to review, we're talking about the distinction between the fixed mindset, which is full of limitations and embraces the victim mindset, and the growth mindset, which is limitless possibility. And the pathway to get there, not knowing, letting go of fixed ideas about ourselves and others, embracing this idea of radical responsibility, embracing ownership for each and every circumstance we face in life and all the choices we make, not to take on a burden. And it has absolutely nothing to do with self blame. Radical responsibility is a trans blame or beyond blame model. It has nothing to do with blaming ourselves, nothing to do with blaming others, and nothing to do with blaming victims at all. Right? When we look to see what's my part in something, that's not for blaming myself. It's just for learning and insight. Because if I can see how something unfolded, how I got from A to B, then I can make different choices next time and get different results. So it's purely for the process of learning. And I embrace choice, living a choice, because it's the most powerful place for me to live. When I assume that others are the cause of how I'm feeling, I give them my power. And we all turn our power over to others all the time. If I'm unhappy and I'm as convinced it's your fault, I just put you in charge of my internal state. We do it all the time. It doesn't make sense, but we do it. We're conditioned to do it. The only place I have any real influence, I can't control you. We can't control other people. If you get nothing else from this, embrace that reality that we cannot control other people, and you'll be a lot happier, right? So I can't control other people, and it's hard enough managing myself, but I have a much better shot here. I have a lot more influence with myself than I do with the world around me. So that's where I choose to place my time and energy, right? So radical responsibility is nothing to do with blame. It's actually an act of radical self-empowerment. And then radical responsibility leads naturally to radical possibility, right? Making the impossible possible. An incredibly exciting place to live. Okay, so keep up your discipline, stay with the challenge, mindfulness, hydration, breath regulation exercises, and now really finding opportunities to work with this growth mindset, even just throughout the day. We want to practice with the little situations. Just notice in your self-talk if you're starting to feel kind of victimized by something or limited or, oh, I can't do this, or you're feeling upset about something, and just stop, feel, let yourself feel what you're feeling, even if you're feeling victimized. Breathe and be, and then go, okay, what can I do here? The magical radical responsibility, radical possibility question is, in any situation I find myself, I can immediately get out of the victim mindset into what I call the co-creative mindset by asking this one simple question: what can I do? What can I do? There's limitless possibilities when we focus on what can I do? Okay, so stick with the challenge, and we will see you tomorrow.